back with the Very Berry Cider. How's it going so far?
I noticed airlock activity had slowed down a lot, so, hey, it's time to give it its first reading. Now, just of note, we started this literally 6 days ago. That's it, 6 days. So, things can happen in 6 days. Remember, this was the one that we didn't have an original gravity reading, but it's somewhere in the 1055 to 1065 range, something like that. So, I'm going to get Mega Made here and stick it down in there.
If you happen to be a VIP, you'll know this is the beverage that I've been sharing you back cider information on because it was going crazy when it was fermenting.
Back cider, that's clever. Yeah, this one went all over the place. It's just nuts. The fruit is a really good nutrient for yeast. We also did use Fermate O, and with a good yeast, Fermate D47, in the right conditions, things just work really, really well. It does have some gas in there still. It is very, very carbonated right now, and not in the good way. This is the bad gas. I know, bad gas. What are you going to say? But, lower ABV things like this, they can finish out quickly. Every once in a while, we'll get somebody that, oh, I made this thing, and in 4 days, my gravity was already down to 1.000. Is that a problem? No, it means you did things right, and it means that your yeast was very happy. And it does happen. This is at 1.000.
Beautiful.
So it is technically probably most likely done. But because we are the way we are, that's going to be difficult.
Look at you.
I only spilled a couple drops.
Look at you. That's impressive.
Yeah, I still spilled some. Anyway, not much, like 4 drops. So, because we are who we are, and because of the things that we tell people to do, which is wait a week, take another reading, we're going to let this sit for a little bit more, and we'll take another reading before we rack it off and get the fruit out of there, and it'll start the aging process at this point. It's not a problem. There's no immediate need to take it off the lees right away. There's no need to rack this today. That I can't stress that enough. People are always rushing to get things racked, and we hear it all the time. So I racked my mead at 1.080, and I go,
Why?
Why? It wasn't done, and you just cut off half your colony and gave them a really difficult time now. So they're probably never going to finish, and that's why we have a couple of videos on it, and one in particular on racking too soon. It's such a simple concept. Don't rack till it's done. Just that simple. Wait till it's completely finished. Let the lees build up. Let the sediment sit there. It's fine. We've left stuff for months before we racked it, and there was no issue whatsoever. But this is going to go back on the shelf, and it's going to sit for another week, and we'll see you then. It's been about another week. Time to take another reading and make sure this is really done before we rack it. Easy enough. Take the airlock out and get all my stuff together here. Graduated cylinder, hydrometer, Mega Made. Get in there.
So I had everything sanitized, and I put out everything that we were going to need for this particular episode. And that's why Brian was a little confused, because normally I don't put everything out.
We also do like 4 or 5 videos in a day. So, wait a minute, what are we doing? What show is this? Which channel are we on?
Who am I?
Yeah. I'm kidding, but I'm really not. Okay, so when last we left this, it was at 1.000. And shockingly, it's at 1.000. So this is ready for the racking process. And this is just the first rack, because there's still a big old bag in there. And I believe there is a spice in there too. So we want to make sure to get all that stuff off of the brew and put everything else into here. That was really, really awkward. Now, just for the record, this is one of those that has a spout. I don't know. I don't like the spout. It's just me. I don't like it. I'd rather use an auto siphon.
Okay, well, I'm going to remove the lid.
Yeah, let's take the lid off.
Maybe.
I'm not going to remove the bag yet. What I'm going to do is put the tube around the bag, because if I pull the bag out now, it could disturb all the lees in there, and it kind of disrupts what we're trying to do. So instead, what we're going to do is put this and into the other side of the fermenter destination, and I'm going to kind of push this down the side about halfway, get it going, Now, I do have the cap on it, okay? And I'm gonna put it down. Yeah, it can go all the way to the bottom. There's not a lot of lees at the bottom here, which is a little bit surprising. It's probably all in that bag, because that was a pretty fine mesh bag, so it's probably holding most of that stuff in. Definitely has a little bit of the cinnamon smell to it. Cinnamon berries. I mean, it's kind of cool. It's almost like a chai, kind of. All right, so we're all racked. Very little headspace, and we're just gonna put the airlock on it. I took a note. Stick it on there. What are we gonna do now?
I'm gonna let it sit.
How long?
A week, maybe.
People
2.
ask us that all the time.
I don't know.
Now, one thing, we are debating whether to carbonate this or not. So if we carbonate it, we don't want to let it sit too long, because we found that the longer you leave something and then try to carbonate it, the more likely your yeast are just done. They're tired, they're dead, whatever is going on, they don't like to carbonate at that point. So if we are going to carbonate it, we'll probably only let it sit a week, maybe 2. If we're not going to carbonate it, this could sit till it totally clears out. So we'll just have to make that determination. We did not take an initial reading on this one, kind of on purpose. It's somewhere in like the 1055, 1.055 range, which is going to be something like 6.5 to 7% ABV. It's in that kind of range. Once you start adding fruits, it's all still kind of a guesswork, because we don't know how much of the fruit actually got in there. We don't, that kind of thing. But for now, this is just going to go back in the fermentation station and sit and think about what it's done. It's going to clear out, and we'll see it when we're ready. Okay, it's been 13 days, so now it's time to move on to the next step. Why has it been 13 days? Because that's how long it took for us to do this. A week probably would have been okay, but hey, life gets in the way sometimes. I wanted this to see if it would clear a little bit more, and well, it's looking pretty good, so let's do this. To rack it, again, all we do is get it from here into here, and I'm going to use our trusty auto siphon. It's really simple. Put that in there, put that in there. Whoops. Make this do this. Don't make it come out of the top, because it was very, 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 very full. I just realized I left the cap on. Whoops. Oh well, I'll do the best I can. Now you might say, why are we racking this before we bottle it? 2 reasons. 1, there's probably a little bit of fine lees in the bottom of this, and I don't want that going into our brews. And 2, actually it's 3 reasons. 2, I'd like to know how much we have, so that way we know how many bottles we need. And 3, I need to prime this with sugar, because I don't like the whole put a teaspoon of sugar in the bottom of every bottle thing. I don't think that's a safe way to go about it. I don't think that's a good idea. So I like to measure it all out into the whole batch. Okay, so we have about 130 to 132 ounces, and I know that because we have this fancy schmancy pitcher with the raised numbers on the side. Why do I like this pitcher so much? Well, let me count the ways. First, we have fluid ounces and milliliters right next to each other. So I know that it's like 3,900 milliliters, okay? But that tells me too, I can divide that out. We have 16-ounce bottles. It's gonna be about 8 bottles. There might be a mouthful left over. I'm pretty sure we can find a use for that. Not really a problem. First thing I'd like to do though is give this a final taste to see if it needs any adjustments before we add priming sugar. So I'm just gonna pour a tiny bit into a glass here. It's actually really nice and clear. Yeah. Check that out. When things are this red, it's hard to tell if they're clear sometimes. Now we know this is going to be served cold and carbonated, so you got to take that with a grain of salt as you're tasting it. I got no problem with that.
It's got that tart fruit thing going on.
It's actually really nice. So that's all we're going to say on that right now, because we're going to carbonate this, let it get bottled up. So the way to do that is I use plain old white sugar. I know people use all kinds of various things, and if you want to use an artificial sugar for this, well, don't, because you actually need a fermentable sugar this time, because we are creating a tiny fermentation.
This sugar is specifically to carbonate the beverage, not to sweeten the beverage.
Right, this will not sweeten it. There will be none of this sugar left. The final gravity should be 1.000 when this is totally done. It does add about 0.3% ABV, but let's be honest, that's just kind of an immeasurable style of number. But a lot of people ask me,
Why do you use the amount of sugar you use? And I know I haven't even said how much I use yet because I want to keep your attention. I'm using 1 ounce, 28 grams of plain old white sugar per gallon. Now, if I was making 5 gallons, I would use 5 ounces. If I was making 3 gallons, I would use 3 ounces. If I was making a half gallon, I would use half an ounce. Yes, it scales perfectly because we need an exact amount of sugar for an exact amount of brew, okay? Now, why do I use 1 ounce? Here's why. After lots and lots of research and lots of experimentation, much of it failed experimentation, I have found this to be a nice overall amount of carbonation. Could you get away with a little bit more, like even 50% more? Of course. Would 50% less still yield some carbonation? Yes, just not as much. We've found this to be just about right. And honestly, to me, it doesn't matter if it's a beer or a cider. I want about the same amount of carbonation. Even a sparkling wine, I want them about the same. This 1 ounce per gallon is like a general rule of thumb that works really well for almost all situations. Once you get it in there, you want to mix it. Because if you don't, now some bottles are going to have more sugar than others. You want to be careful. Someone asked the other day, couldn't I just use a simple syrup? Yeah, you totally can. My only concern with that is I'm already really close to the volume of 8 bottles. I'd have even more if I do that. And sure, I could melt it into like a tablespoon or two of water and get it that way. And that might actually be worthwhile doing. Now that I'm really thinking about it, I've just never done it that way. And that's why I don't do it that way. Sometimes, you do things just because that's how you've always done it. It doesn't mean it's necessarily the best way or the most right way. I mean, there's so many things that we've learned along the way here because someone said, hey, why don't you do this? And we went, yeah, that makes so much more sense than what we were doing. We never proclaimed to be experts at this. We've just done a lot of it. So we know a lot of the pitfalls, mostly because we've done them. So, take that as it is.
Learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, we make the mistakes so you don't have to. So I just want to get that mixed in. Pretty close. This is not really very bubbly right now. Like it degassed nicely from sitting, so that's a good thing too. If you saw a lot of foam coming up or a lot of degassing, you want to fully degas this before you bottle, otherwise you can have overpressurization and you're going to have some of those nasty gases in there, and nobody wants nasty gases. That is mixed up. So the next step, we're going to put it into bottles. And to do that, it's just racking once again. All right, so we're ready to bottle. You might notice that we have 1 brown bottle and all clear bottles. And you know why that is? Because we're real people and we ran out of clear bottles. So we're gonna have to use 1 brown one. That'll be the last one I do though, just in case. That way, if it's not full or whatever, it won't get carbonated. We'll just drink that one and not tell you ever again.
Does it matter if you use clear bottles or brown bottles? No, it does not.
Not really. In beer, it can make a difference.
We like using the clear bottles because it's a lot easier to see what level the fluid is when you're...
Yeah, and I just like to see the color. For film too, like to show you guys, I really like to use clear bottles because...
But wait!
We're missing something.
The bottling wand.
So yeah, bottling wand. It is basically just a piece of plastic firm tubing with a stem valve on the end. Some people love them, some people hate them. I tend to like using it. You just stick it in the end of the tubing a little bit. Not too much. You want to get it back out unless you have 2 of these, which is another way to do it. And then this just goes into your bottle. You do not want to hit your partner in the face with it though. Definitely not something you want to do. But you do want to have it in the bottle and pushed in. So that way when you start the siphoning action, it will actually go into the bottle, because if you don't do that, you'll just be pushing air and it really won't work at all. And well, you could oxygenate things. It could be bad. I'm going to take over. By the way, can you just show them what I do with the bottle? We have it all the way in the bottle. It's too difficult to do right here.
The liquid goes up, 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 and he pushes it like all the way to there, and then he takes it out because there's displacement. See?
Why do you always say that with an accent? She
It's
always says that word with an accent.
okay. If you know why I'm saying it that way, leave a comment in
What's
the
it
section
from?
below.
You got to say it
Don't
now.
tell Brian. It's a secret. Shh. And that way, I know you're cool like me.
Yeah, that's where the wand comes in handy, because I can lift the wand up and it stops the flow of liquid immediately. So that way I can just move on to the next one without spilling. There are other ways to do it, they're just messy. All right, so I think this is the first time it's actually worked out to exactly 8 bottles. I mean, they're all full to roughly the exact same amount. Even that one is full to, yeah, this is exactly what you want. If one bottle is only half full, you don't really want to carbonate that. You want to drink it sooner rather than later. There's been some discussion as to how that pressure works. I just know that it's more likely to make a bottle bomb if it's only half full. Don't ask me the science on it. I can't explain that. I just know that that is a truth, if you will. But what are we going to do with these?
Gonna let them carbonate.
Ha! I threw her off. Okay, we actually have a tote, like a big plastic tub that we got from Lowe's. You can get it from Home Depot too if you really want to, or pretty much anywhere that sells those types of things. And we call that the bomb shelter. It's large, it's high enough that these bottles can sit in there, and we're gonna put them in there just in case something goes awry and they begin to explode. Like if a bottle has a chip in it that we didn't see or something like that. It's better to explode into a plastic tub than into our house or us or our cats. So that's the thing. Plus, it's easier to clean it up. And it's not as likely to go through this plastic. It's pretty thick stuff. How long does the carbonation stage take? Well, that really depends more on your environment and your brew than anything else. In our case, it usually takes 7 to 10 days. But here's the beautiful part. Because we measured it out, because this was dry, there's no harm in letting them sit longer. They're not going to continue fermenting. It's only going to ferment so far. And that's the end of it. It'll stop and it'll stay at that point. So you can let this sit for a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, 3 months. It doesn't matter. They're still going to be safe. Okay, that's a critical thing to understand.
If you are new to natural carbonation, you can do a trick that we have shown in other videos where you repurpose a plastic bottle for soda or whatnot that you know at one time held carbonation.
Roughly the same size.
Roughly the same size. You fill the same amount in that bottle, and then as time progresses, you give it a little squeeze. It'll eventually build up enough pressure in there from said carbonation that when you squeeze it, it's very firm. And that should indicate that your carbonation is done.
A word about this. There's a little caveat to that. It's helpful. It's a guide. It's kind of like the Pirate's Code. It's not a rule, because I have had it happen, and I know many people have had it happen, where it felt super, super firm, like it was rock hard, but really there was no carbonation in the other bottles. So don't go by that 100%. That's why I like this method. Let them sit for a few weeks, pull them out, and honestly, 99% of the time, we have good luck with this. So it just works. But anyway, we will see you in a couple weeks when these are ready to taste. So, no video series on a brew would be complete without a tasting. This is just a preliminary tasting. I don't know if there'll be a year tasting on this one because it's just a cider. But we are going to give this a taste. Now, this has been chilled because if you chill a carbonated beverage, it keeps the CO2 inside rather than going psh all over the place. However, I do need to find out, is it carbonated? And wow, you heard that pop, right? It's been about a week, okay? Maybe 8 days. So it is definitely carbonated, which is what we wanted. And if I pour it just right, yeah, you can see the head forming on it. Perfect. Carbonation just adds a little bit of an extra flavor note, texture note to a brew. Makes it nicer.
So one of the things that I noticed about this right away is the color. Look at that. Look at how vibrant that is.
That's what we call it, very berry.
It's a beautiful color. I'm so happy. I'm a color person. I love color.
Yeah. Now this is a dry mead. Now this is a dry cider on purpose. We wanted this to be dry. But it does have, like she said, beautiful color. It'll smell like a little bit of berry. Not a tremendous amount. Being cold makes it hard to get a good smell.
Yeah, I'm getting more, I think, of the alcohol scent, even though what is the ABV?
7.5. So this isn't super low.
It should be.
It's actually like mid-range. It's high for a cider, really. All right, well, here we go. Oh, you know what this reminds me of? The hard seltzers.
Oh, yeah.
This is hard seltzer, without a doubt. It's got a fruity flavor to it, but it's totally dry.
It's got that crisp, sharp, cutting edge, beautiful.
It's actually pretty nice.
If you've been doing yard work, if you're hot and sweaty, you just want something to refresh you, this is a, oh, I'm ready, I'm good to go again.
Yeah.
Refresher drink.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny, we tasted this when it was warm and non-carbonated, and we were like, all right, I think it'll be better carbonated and cold. We weren't wrong.
Yeah.
We were totally not wrong. Wow. This is totally not what I expected it to be at all, but it's actually really pleasant. Like, I was hoping, see, in my head, okay, let me just bear with you here. In my head, I like alcoholic beverages that are either super strong flavored or high alcohol or very sweet, which is, it sounds like a weird dichotomy. I know, but that's just the way I am.
And this is neither.
This is exactly. The carbonation makes this, the cold makes this, because it is quite literally one of those flavored seltzers, the flavored hard seltzers. Oh my God, it's so exactly that.
Yeah. And
Wow.
with the combination of the carbonation and the temperature, my first initial response is that crisp berry note.
Yeah.
Not the sweet berry note
tartness.
and not the tart berry note, the crisp.
Oh.
Where it's like, it's kind of like an in-between thing. If you think about apples and the range of apples, you have sweet apples and you have tart apples and then you have crisp apples.
I guess.
Which are kind of in the middle, more towards the tart than the sweet. But
yeah. I'm going with the tart.
that's fine.
I get tart berry.
Each their own.
Okay, let me take you on a little trip. The initial impact of this is the crispness of the sharp berry flavor and the carbonation. There's a little bit of an astringency that comes from fermented sugars that I'm tasting, that I also taste in those hard seltzers, so I know that's how they did it. But that is not a bad thing. It's very bold in your mouth, the first initial impact. Then as it gets through the palate, the berryness actually comes through a little bit more. It tastes more fruity, more berry-like. And then on the end, it's very crisp, very clean, very quick. So it's like in and done. It's very, 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 very quick. Which, there's no good or bad to any of that, okay? That's the thing. Like a short finish or a long finish, it's more just, how is it? And some people like long finish things. Some people think that makes it more complex. Other people prefer a short finish because it's cleaner and crisper. It's personal preference as much as that's just how it is.
I think it's more of a time and place for everything. And so those longer finishes work better in a specific arena, where the crisp, clean finishes work in a different arena.
Absolutely. You hit it on the head. If you were out in the yard working in the garden, cutting the grass or something, and it's really hot, crack open one of these. Yes, absolutely. Works like a beer. Very much like the way a beer works, although beer is much sweeter.
There are certain beverages that I like to attribute waking up to. And I don't mean by having breakfast. I mean that when you drink it, you
I
feel...
don't want alcohol for breakfast.
No. We don't recommend that. But when you drink it, you feel perked. You feel reinvigorated.
Gotcha.
And I'm getting that sensation from this beverage. So I'm thinking if I was tired, if I was overheated, if I was feeling sluggish, and it was later in the day, I could drink this and I would feel reinvigorated. I'd feel
You need a little more.
some pep in my step, if you will.
Wow, there's an old statement. Even I don't say that.
I like to use
She
all
mixes
the
it up,
words.
yeah. For something so simple, this is surprisingly good. And I think for a beginner brewer who hasn't really made a lot of brews, this would be a wonderful way to get into carbonation and exploring complementary flavors for a cider. Yeah. Because it's cider plus is really the way I see this.
It reminds me of those beverages that are kind of in vogue right now.
Yeah, the hard seltzers.
White Claw and all those
hard
things. This is very similar to those.
Oh yeah, this is, I mean, like the same. This really does. If there's a berry White Claw out there, I don't know if there is or not because I don't drink that stuff. I only know about
Abby,
it.
let us know. Is there a berry White Claw?
I only know about it because her brother's wife drinks them and she keeps asking us to make them. Hey, we made one. There you go. Yeah, this actually very much fits the bill.
Yeah.
Almost exactly. Even this, they're a little lower alcohol than this. They're like 4.5, I think, or 5. This is 7.5. So hey, you know, get a little extra kick from ours. But it's got, I mean, the carbonation is quite strong. And I think we we did the right amount of carbonation. I use that 28 grams or 1 ounce per gallon. It's just a nice standard, okay? It works really, really well for 99.9% of brews. Sometimes you might want more, sometimes you want a little bit less.
And when Brian was
works
talking
well.
about that the carbonation is strong, it's not overly bubbly, but it has that carbonated beverage taste. And if
Yeah.
you're familiar with that, then you know what he's talking about.
Yep, exactly. And it hits you with it, and it works just really, really well with this particular beverage. I don't have a whole lot else to
quite
say.
pleased.
This is great.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not my wheelhouse. I will just say that right now, this is not my wheelhouse. Abby has asked me to make hard seltzers, and well, it's been 2 years and I still haven't done it. So what does that tell you? It's just not the kind of thing that I really want to make, because I'm afraid if she doesn't like it, then what's the point in having 4 or 5 bottles of it laying around, because she ain't gonna drink it, you know?
But now we know Father's Day is coming up, right?
Yep, we might bring some of these
We're gonna
over and
bring
see if
some of
she
these
likes
and
them.
see. We'll put them to the test with Abby.
Yeah, if it passes the Abby test, we know it's hard seltzer adjacent. But you know what it's time for?
It's time for numbers.
Now, this is a unique one because I have to score something that isn't really something I like.
So are we scoring this based on our personal preferences? Or are we scoring this based on what we expect a hard seltzer-like beverage to taste like?
Well, this is a hard cider.
Right.
Or a cider if you're in anywhere but the United States. And don't even get me started. I am so sorry that the United States calls them hard ciders and everywhere else calls them cider. But that is how it's called here, and I can't change that. Not me personally. But we do have 138,000 subscribers. So if you want this to be called cider where you live, as opposed to hard cider, write your congressman, write your senator, write to the president, write to whoever might be in charge, and tell them you want cider to be cider rather than juice.
So now that Brian is done with his rant, I would like to talk to the European contingent of our viewership. We agree.
You took my glass.
I know. I absconded with everything. We agree that it should just be called cider.
Yeah,
That makes sense to us.
I call it cider most of the time.
But unfortunately, we live in the U.S. And in the U.S., it's called hard cider.
We also call them gallons and ounces and pounds.
That's not our fault. That's where we live's fault.
Yeah.
So don't blame us. I'm so
If
sorry.
we could change it, we would.
Yes.
However, we can't. But 138,000 of you people can, so put it back on the audience. It's
Fight
up to
the
you.
power.
Make the change. But anyway, back to the cider. No, it's not really that strong. This is our third tasting today. Mm-hmm. I like this.
I like
And
this.
this is not the kind of thing that I normally like.
I concur.
Yep. So our scoring system is 1 through 10. 10 being, I would choose this above all others. This is the pinnacle of its style. This is the most amazing brew ever. 1 being probably toxic. Probably want to dump that. Not drink it. Somewhere in the 4 to 5 range is where I go, yeah, I would probably reach for that willingly. I'm trying to drink it. I love that you're acting out what I'm saying. That's awesome. This one is unique because for me, it's not my wheelhouse. It's not even the style of beverage that I prefer.
But I think it hits all of the targets if this was your wheelhouse.
Absolutely. And I'm going to score it as such. I'm going to say, okay, as an example of a berry cider that's carbonated and cold, how do I feel about it? I know that sounds really, really weird and obtuse, but that's how I'm going to score it. Because, okay, I'll just be honest. Me, personally, if I was just to say, how do I feel about this, 1 through 10, it's a 5. It's a 5. It's not something I would reach for. It's not something that I would necessarily choose above other things. I would drink it, but it's not really something I'd go for. However, we're about to give real scores. Are you ready?
No.
I just threw the paradigm completely off.
It's okay. I have a number regardless. It doesn't matter.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yes, sure.
1, 2, 3,
6.
7. See how much of a difference that can make.
6 was the number that just popped in my head, so I stuck with 6 because I really didn't feel like thinking about numbers too much. Why did I give it a 6? I'm low man, so I'll go ahead with it. I'm giving it a 6.
Even when you're high man, you go first. Come on. Okay, go ahead.
Not all the time. Just that one time that I will never, ever live down, ever.
Yeah, sure you will. You're cute. I forgive you.
I gave it a 6 because that was just the number that popped into my head. Not really any particular reason. I agree with Brian, and what he was talking about is that this particular style of beverage is really in neither of our
Yeah,
wheelhouses.
we don't really go for the carbonated, bubbly stuff.
Yeah,
Once in a while.
The crisp, clean, carbonated stuff, sure, it's great and it has its place, but it's not something that normally pops into my mind that I want to have that.
Right.
If it was, this particular
would be it.
beverage would be certainly higher than a 6.
I like this better than some of the beers we've made,
Yes.
if that makes any sense.
And for those of you who love beer, and
I'm sorry.
we know many of you personally, and we adore you, we mean no offense.
I'm just not a big beer drinker.
It's not our thing.
Which is weird because I like whiskey. But anyway.
But whiskey's not beer.
No, but they're made from the same grain.
It doesn't matter.
I know.
It's a different process.
Yeah, I gave this a 7, and here's why. As an example of a berry cider, I think this is a 7. What would I improve on it? I would like it to be a touch sweeter for my personal taste, to really enjoy it more. I would like it to have more than one note. When I say it comes across as berry, what I mean by is, it's berry, but what berry? Is it raspberry? Is it blueberry? It's so hard to tell. The flavors have muted together enough that it's just berry, which is cool.
The carbonation and the astringency.
Astringency.
Yeah.
It's not working well.
Has kind of like truncated the flavor profile. So you're just like berry and
Yeah.
stop.
It's got like 2 or 3 notes. Not a problem because it was made to be that way. Okay, that's the thing. You have to understand, as an example of what this was made to be, this is actually very, very good. I might even be able to go higher than a 7 if I go that way.
This is like a 9.5 if based on that process. But that's really not where we exist. So that's why we couldn't go there.
Right. However, I will say this. If you are a beginner and you've never really made anything complex before, this has a little more complexity than just a straight cider that you drink dry and cold or without carbonating. This has a little bit more complexity to that. Great recipe to start with. It'll teach you some basics, and it gives you a really flavorful thing that you hand this to most people who are used to drinking hard seltzers today, and they will love this. They will think this is amazing. Yeah. Because it's on par with any White Claw seltzer that I've ever had.
Absolutely.
Which I've had like 4, maybe 5. Abby makes me drink them all the time so that I know what they taste like.
We like to drink them as we're doing the neighborhood Christmas light tour.
Oh no, I'm drinking scotch by that point.
Okay, I drink them as Abby and I are doing the Christmas
Me and Colby are
neighborhood.
drinking scotch. Anyway, yeah, we kind of made this sound like we didn't like it. Don't take that way. We really did like this. This is just not the kind of beverage that we go for. That's the difference. So we're trying really hard to be impartial and objective rather than say, oh, well, this isn't my thing, so I'm scoring it low.
So if you enjoy White Claw or any other of the similar beverages in that genre, make this, enjoy this, and be proud of what you've created.
One other thing that I'd like to add is if you are into White Claw and things like that, you're probably looking at it from a calorie perspective too. This is going to be low calorie, just like White Claw, because there's no residual sugars. It went totally dry.
And it's a relatively low ABV. Not as low as White Claw, but still relatively
pretty
low.
close. So has just a touch more alcohol, but basically all the other benefits that White Claw would have, this is going to have. So it's really cheap White Claw that you can make yourself. That's a win in my book. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching and have a great day.
Bye-bye.